black man's family. And that's some awful history to teach. Now, if you want to look history right straight in the eye, you're going to get a black eye. Because it isn't important whether a few black heroes got lost or stolen or strayed in America's history textbooks. What's important is why they got left out.
There's a reason voices like Bill Cosby's have always been seen as dangerous to the people in power, not because of scandal or headlines, but because of the kind of truth he was willing to speak. In this rare and powerful clip, he breaks down the lie we've all been fed, that black history started with slavery. He reminds us that before chains, there was culture. Before pain, there was pride. Before we were stolen, we were whole. He talks about how the world has taken from African creativity, from its art, its rhythm, its soul, and how that story is almost never told. Cosby speaks on how America didn't just enslave people, it tore families apart, and even after slavery ended, the destruction continued. This isn't just history, it's the roots of how we got here, and if you dare to look at it honestly, it'll hurt. But that's where healing begins. This clip is more than words, it's a mirror, and it shows us how deep the truth goes, and why people like Cosby, for all the noise around them, have always been feared when they speak like this.
Slavery. That's the place everybody likes to start Negro history. You have ignorant black men being brought over from Africa in chains. Terrible thing, slavery. But this way slavery is taught, it sort of takes the sting out of it. Because the way it's usually taught, people think that we Afro-Americans started with nothing but little grass skirts like the kids in the Tarzan movies. And though America gave us slavery, America kindly gave us religion and a lick or two of education. And when we get more jobs and more education, then up from slavery. But we had something before we left Africa, something more than rhythm. I mean, we had a high culture. The culture was so high that great artists in the world are still borrowing from it. Now, here's a sculpture by an unknown African artist. And here's what Paul Klee took from him. Now, here's a work by an unknown black African, and Pablo Picasso liked what he saw. Another African design, and Modigliani swiped it, or he was influenced by it, or whatever polite word you want to use. Another black African artist, and Picasso didn't change it very much. I mean, when you look at this copy, you got to give us a little more than rhythm. You got to give us style. Now, if you tell the history of slavery right, you got a big problem on your hands. The slave trader didn't take some savage out of Africa. He took a human being, sold him like an animal, and separated him from his family. America invented the cruelest slavery in the history of the world because it broke up black families. After slavery was over, America kept breaking up the black man's family. And that's some awful history to teach. Now, if you want to look history right straight in the eye, you're going to get a black eye. Because it isn't important whether a few black heroes got lost or stolen or strayed in America's history textbooks. What's important is why they got left out. Now, this country has got a psychological history. There was a master race, there was a slave race. And though there isn't any political slavery anymore, those same old attitudes have hung around. I mean, the burning part of Burn, Baby Burn is right here in this classroom.
The importance of black history, I mean, you just can't measure it, man. Because then, and I think this is why people don't want to serve it, and they don't want to put it out. Because then most people will really realize that we have done something, you know, as a group. When they say we, I include all of us, man. Because, you know, the cat's going to vote for Wallace. He's talking about keeping in their places, see, or keeping his place. He's not talking about everybody except Bill Cosby. No, he's jealous because Bill Cosby's got some bread, too. Yeah. He's jealous because Harry Belafonte's got 2 Cadillacs or whatever. And he just assumed that this whole country be all white, you see.
If truth only came from perfect people, we'd never hear it. That's something we have to understand. Bill Cosby's legacy is complicated, but that doesn't mean we should ignore everything he ever said. Back in 1968, he spoke on issues that are still relevant today. How black history was being erased from schools, how politicians used racism to manipulate voters, and how people were being controlled by a system that dictated what they could know and believe. He pointed out how black students weren't being taught their own history, how textbooks ignored black contributions, and how the system made it seem like black people hadn't built anything worth remembering. And here we are, in 2025, still arguing over black history in schools, still seeing books banned, still watching the narrative controlled. The playbook hasn't changed. Cosby also spoke on politics, calling out how bigots weren't just voting for a leader, they were voting for a way of life they wanted to protect. Ellis made his racist intentions clear, and yet people still supported him. Today, politicians use different words, but the strategy is the same. Keep people divided, keep them controlled. And when Cosby called Nixon a pathological liar, it wasn't just about one man, it was about a system built on deception. So, we can debate Cosby the man, but his message still stands. And if we dismiss it just because of who said it, we risk falling right back into the traps he warned us about.
Well, it's just sad, that's all, man. Because I don't believe any of them. I think they're all lying to everybody.
Yeah.
I think Wallace is lying to the white bigots. And they're out there talking about George is going to do it. Because George ain't going to do it.
True.
You know. Now, who was that cat today? I read in the paper. It was the president of the NAACP up in Connecticut, shaking hands with George. Wow. Did you see the picture? This picture of cat. I forgot his name, man. Shaking hands with George. And I said, well, you know, in Connecticut. Now, what is this all about? When George is talking about he's going to run over us with his car, which is going to be funny to see that, you know.
Definitely.
Because the cat's talking about he's going to be president of the United States of America. And this is the man that the bigots are voting for, see. Now, this shows you how much class bigots have. They're going to vote for a cat who was, say, George is going to just keep them in their place. How? George is going to run over them with his car, man. And I believe he's going to do that, you know, because George is cool, and he will run over them if they give any trouble. Nixon, I think, is a pathological liar. Man's got to say some lie about something somewhere.
12 years, all I've read about are white people, you know. And now we're going to have this course, and this course is 20 weeks long. And he said, all you can give us is 1 or 2 books by black authors because you don't think there are any other reputable black authors out there, you know. What is that to tell me, you know? It's the same thing all the other kids are going through in the schools. Because all they're being told is that, well, there's no one else out there that's really writing anything that's literature. They're writing a whole lot of garbage. You know?
Sure.
And like I suggested to him, Eldridge Cleaver, Soul on Ice. Well, he says that's not literature. He says just a whole lot of writing.
What about Man-Child in the Promised Land? There are an awful lot of white people who would really like to know. Maybe not so, you know, so much in the sense that they demand black history themselves, because they can't really be interested in it. I don't look for a white person to be so interested in something that has to do with black people, because he's not educated that way. He's not brought up that way. He lives in his own community. He goes to his own school. He dates his own women, except for when he wants to slip out and find something interesting. The same way the black man slips out to find something interesting. But then there's a heavy-handed, all-white treatment that just isn't fair, you see. Now, we talk about a book like Man-Child and the Promised Land. I mean, that was like my neighborhood. I mean, the same cats that he talked about had cats in my neighborhood the same way, with the gang fights and so forth and so on. Drugs, we never really came into contact with drugs the way Brownie's book did, because most of the kids I hung out with, we were hitting the ball or chasing the ball or something like that. You know, I came into contact once with marijuana. It was a Thursday night dance. I think I was like 13 years old or something. Had on all of the hippest stuff, man. My pants way up, you know, the Daily News in my right pocket, had my Jeff on, and I was looking bad and smoking my father's Camel cigarettes, you know. And this cat came up to me and said, "Give me a light." And I noticed that the butt he was smoking was kind of short. And I offered him a cigarette. I said, don't you want? He said, no, man, this is fine. You know, and I put my cigarette up to his, and he made that noise, you know. And I shut out of there so fast, man. You know. But the importance of black history, I mean, you just can't measure it, man. Because then, and I think this is why people don't want to serve it, and they don't want to put it out. Because then most people will really realize that we have done something, you know, as a group. When they say we, I include all of us, man. Because, you know, the cat's going to vote for Wallace. He's talking about keeping in their places, see, or keep in his place. He's not talking about everybody except Bill Cosby. No, he's jealous because Bill Cosby's got some bread, too.
Yeah.
He's jealous because Harry Belafonte's got 2 Cadillacs or whatever. And he just assumed that this whole country be all white, you see. I just feel that if we can get the history put in, that isn't the only thing, but that is a very important thing, man. And it's an example of the racism and bigotry that exists in this country, right. Because look at how harmless it is, you see, to say that a certain person did something and they did this and so forth and so on, and make it a part of an exam, but they refuse to do it. Before, last year, I excused the teachers and the school system for it because, you know, you have to be prepared. Yeah. And I said, okay, if you don't have it this year, all right, that's because you're not prepared, but you have the summer. You know, go to your library, go to the reserve book room, read, find out, you know, black heroes in World War II, black heroes World War I, so forth and so on. Men who have invented things. The real black man who was with Lewis and Clark.
Right.
The cat who went to the North Pole, how much he did, so forth and so on. Let's get all this together, man.
They tried to silence Bill Cosby because he was sharing truths they didn't want you to hear. Take a listen.
This United States of America is a place where we've got to take another step. Black Americans have to take another step. And it's not an anti-white step. It's a step in a direction where we have to make sacrifices, monetary sacrifices. We have to give money so that we can build our own. You've heard this time and time again, but Martin Luther King says we shall overcome. Well, we have to move out of that period. We have to move on to we have overcome.
Listen.
And of course that will make Martin smile. But it takes not just money, it takes the mental capacity to do that.
When I listen to what Bill Cosby said, I feel it deep in my soul because he was speaking nothing but truth. He wasn't coming from a place of hate. He was coming from love, real love for his people. He was telling us what we needed to hear, not what we wanted to hear. It wasn't about blaming anyone else. It was about holding ourselves accountable, about building something for ourselves, about putting our money, our energy, our focus into creating what we need. Martin Luther King laid the foundation. He gave us the dream. But Cosby was trying to show us how to live it, and he stood by that message. He tried to guide us, to wake us up, and he caught a lot of heat for it. Some of us didn't see it at the time, and maybe we still don't. But I'm telling you now, what he said matters. It matters because it's still real. It matters because nobody's coming to save us. We gotta do it ourselves. And if we don't listen now, we'll keep losing.
I liked Amos and Andy. I did not see them as ignorant blacks. See, but that's a different way that we accept certain things. I mean, there are certain routines that I can tell on a stage which deals with an all-black audience that I would not tell on television. Wouldn't allow it because there are some white people who would laugh at that and say, yeah, that's them and that's why they ain't gonna get the so far from the sun. You understand what I'm saying?
Sometimes the truth doesn't come with shouting. It just lands. And what you're about to hear is one of the most honest things ever said about Amos and Andy, about how we've been seen, how we've been used, and how we've been disrespected as black people. It's not loud, but it cuts deep. If you grew up in this world, or lived long enough to see the shift, then you'll understand exactly why this matters. It's not just opinion, it's lived experience, and it deserves to be heard.
I mean, I can't bring it upon myself to say, well, because I've suffered, and I'm going to kick this little white kid, and I'm going to step on him. Or somebody's mother comes up and says, Mr. Cosby, I enjoyed your show. Or for me to look at her and say, well, you're trash because I know all of your people. I don't live that way, and I try not to teach my children to live that way. Aha! But they are aware.
Of those feelings.
They are aware of the feelings. They are aware of who they are.
Bill Cosby begins by reflecting on his upbringing as a black boy in America. He explains that during the 1940s and 1950s, black individuals were taught to emulate the appearance and behavior of successful white men to gain acceptance. This included dressing in three-piece suits, adopting Ivy League hairstyles, and speaking in a certain manner. However, despite these efforts, they were met with persistent prejudice and racism, leading to a sense of paranoia and disillusionment.
What did you think, or what were you told as a kid about the Amos and Andy show?
First of all, this is going to take a while because you have to run down, as a black man, as a black boy, what the thought was in order to get through to the establishment and to gain acceptance. See, in the 40s and the 50s, most black people were trying to gain acceptance. So the idea was to imitate the black. I mean, whatever you wanted to be. You want to be a black businessman?
So you spoke as the black businessman would speak, and you would dress as he dressed with the three-piece suits, and you would act that way to gain acceptance, you see, and you would talk, so forth and so on, and you wore an Ivy League haircut the same way that he did, and so forth and so on.
Cosby delves deeper into the concept of paranoia, stating that it's not exclusive to black people. He emphasizes that humans, regardless of race, tend to create hierarchies and find reasons to discriminate, even among those who look alike. This insight highlights the universal nature of prejudice and the human tendency to marginalize others based on arbitrary differences.
Well, coming into the late 50s and the 60s and finding out that we're so disillusioned by what is happening, because prejudice and racism, of course, it does not exist in all white people, but there's enough that kicks everybody in the backside so that you know that there are enough people who are against you because you are black, that you become paranoid, which is not an evil word to say, because there are white people who are paranoid. They're white, Jewish, Irish, or whatever. They're paranoid about who they are and what people are going to say about them. I happen to feel that man himself will always be against somebody. If we all had black skin, brown hair, brown eyes, everybody included, we'd still be after the dude with the freckle or the bent toe. It would still be somebody we were trying to do that pecking order thing with.
Cosby shares his personal enjoyment of the Amos and Andy show, stating that he didn't perceive the characters as ignorant. However, he acknowledges that the way black audiences viewed the show differed significantly from white audiences. While black viewers might find humor and relatability, white viewers could misinterpret the content, leading to laughter at black people's expense rather than with them.
I liked Amos and Andy. I did not see them as ignorant blacks. See, but that's a different way that we accept certain things. I mean, there are certain routines that I can tell on a stage which deals with an all-black audience that I would not tell on television. Wouldn't allow it, because there are some white people who would laugh at that and say, yeah, that's them, and that's why they ain't going to get the so far from the so on. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So Amos and Andy had to be taken off, although I enjoyed it.
Despite his personal appreciation for Amos and Andy, Cosby explains that the show had to be taken off the air. The primary reason was the concern that white audiences were laughing at black people, reinforcing harmful stereotypes. The decision to cancel the show was a step towards demanding better representation and respect for black individuals in media.
Although in the confines of my own home, we might say, yeah, Brother Andy, we're going to do the so forth and so on. But we don't want the white people laughing at us, because so far, you know, it's just, America has allowed these people who are against us to still exist. You see, now we run into busing problems. I can understand every white bigot's problem with busing. I can understand every white person who doesn't want their child to go to all the way across town to that school because they moved away.
Do you have to be a bigot to be against busing?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. But my next step is this. There are enough bigots who use the genuine cat.
Cosby discusses the complexities of racism in the context of education, particularly the busing policies aimed at desegregation. He acknowledges the concerns of white families who opposed busing, often for reasons tied to maintaining certain neighborhood dynamics. Simultaneously, he highlights the plight of middle-class black families who, after working hard to move to better neighborhoods, found their children being bused back into less favorable environments. This situation underscores the systemic failures in addressing racial inequalities in education.
And we have black people who have bothered to run and hustle and save and move away and get away from the rats in the project and the plaster falling and so forth and so on, which is every man's right to do, to move out of there. And they too are affected by this busing thing, because you may have some middle-class black kids who are now being bused back to where the dude moved out of. You understand? I'm not saying that these people have a right to. All I'm saying is that there is a solution to this, which the government itself has not made an effort or a step to take care of. So we all, I believe, are at each other's throats because the government has not laid down the laws of this land as far as the Constitution is concerned.
Cosby critiques political figures like Spiro Agnew, who made statements that resonated with certain demographics, often exacerbating racial tensions. He urges the audience to think critically about the motivations behind such rhetoric and the reasons why certain messages gain popularity. The emphasis is on understanding the underlying issues rather than merely reacting to political soundbites.
We should all be proud of our public schools in Nebraska. We're ranked 7th in the nation for academic performance with an 88.
And we still put up with people like Wallace. We still listen to folks like an Agnew. And I really mean that, the things that he said about... No, wait a minute. I don't want you to clap for any of these things, because these are my thoughts, and I don't want you to take sides. I just want you to think about what I'm saying. For instance, the things that Mr. Agnew has said at times, if you weigh these things, you know what he's saying, and you know why he's popular in certain places. You know that when certain people argue about, well, they're taking over, there's no way that all of the black people can ever really get together as well as all of the white people can get together and go down and kill, so forth and so on. Ain't no way.
Addressing the portrayal of black individuals in the media, Cosby points out the disparity in how crimes are reported based on race. He notes that when a black person commits a crime, their race is often highlighted, whereas similar actions by white individuals are reported without racial identifiers. This selective reporting perpetuates stereotypes and contributes to the false narrative of inherent black violence.
I think it's the silliest thing in the world for somebody to get riled up because two black men show up with a gun and we're going to kill everybody. That's some kind of fantasy that you've laid out that you know in your heart it ain't going to exist. You tell me and prove to me that black people are violent and that they're going to take over, and I can open up the New York Daily News and show you white people who are killing their daughters, their husbands, their wives, their children, killing each other off. Well, if we put that in the paper and make it black and white, which is where the whole thing happens. It's in the paper. If a black man does something, it says, John Jones, black this, said black, 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 and did the black, black. Now, if a white man does it, it isn't white man Jones. It's just a man. Nondescript, just a regular old raggedy man went out, killed his two daughters and his wife, and shot himself. Now, if he does that, then everybody seems to just either sympathize with it or let it go out the window. But if a black man does it, then any white bigot can point his finger and say, see that? There they go again.
Cosby concludes by expressing his desire to teach and treat all children equally, regardless of race. He emphasizes the importance of living without hatred and instilling the same values in his children. The removal of Amos and Andy from the airwaves and the push for better representation in shows like I Spy were steps towards achieving a more equitable and respectful portrayal of black individuals in media.
Well, that isn't right. It isn't right, and it isn't right to try and let America go this way, because as a black man who is becoming a school teacher who is aiming to teach not only poor blacks but poor whites as well and treat everybody equally, I mean, I can't bring it upon myself to say, well, because I've suffered, and I'm going to kick this little white kid, and I'm going to step on him. Or somebody's mother comes up and says, Mr. Cosby, I enjoyed your show. Or for me to look at her and say, well, you're trash because I know all of your people. I don't live that way, and I try not to teach my children to live that way. Aha! But they are aware. They are aware of the feelings. They are aware of who they are. But it just isn't racially. So we have to take Amos and Andy off. We have to, at times, look at a Bill Cosby on I Spy from the late things and say, well, this guy doesn't have a girlfriend, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that, so therefore he is as. We have to ask for things that are black on TV, because there are things that we don't see, you see. Now, in New York, it's much hipper than most places. You know, you can turn that dial quite a bit, man, on the cable TV and see quite a few black things going on. Sure, they're on at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning or whatever. So what? Anyway, it is there, and it's moving a step higher. But by the same token, you can't really be white either. You sitting here, you can't really be white. You know, you're not really yourself.
When you've been misrepresented for so long, you don't just want a seat at the table. You want the whole setup to change. Cosby wasn't just talking about TV shows. He was talking about dignity, about not being reduced to a joke in someone else's living room, about how it feels when people laugh at you instead of with you. That kind of thing stays with a people, and after a while, you stop accepting it. You start asking for something better, not because you're bitter, but because you know you deserve more.
Check this out now.